So Chelsea head to Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia for the second group game of the Club World Cup. Fun fact, and I love cramming these wrestling references in when I can, the same venue as WrestleMania 40. So for some of us wrestling fans who are also Chelsea fans, there's some of these American venues that are a little bit familiar. But this game, I'm curious to see what Maresca does with his lineup again. And I'm a little bit conflicted because he went so strong in the first game against LAFC. And the way teams have, especially bigger teams, at least ones that we have, sufficient knowledge of, the big European teams that is, they are going very strong, and Chelsea pretty much fielded a first 11 on Monday evening, or at least Monday evening UK time, against LAFC. And I wonder if that's going to be at least the case for this game before we qualify. I think if Chelsea put themselves in a position where they qualify and know that the third game is in some ways a dead rubber, then you may see a flurry of changes, kind of the way we sometimes see it at international tournaments, where some of those kind of fringe figures that don't play a lot, it's kind of their one chance to get a start in the lineup. I hope that isn't the case, because I think part of the intrigue, I keep on saying, is seeing some of these new faces, but I'm a little bit more hesitant to assume there is going to be mass change, and some of the players I suspected may have started one of these games is absolutely going to come into the starting 11. Also factoring in an opponent who is top of the Brazilian league at the moment, who are coming into this game not only because of their win on Monday with a lot of confidence, but tactically, I think technically, I think looking at the South American teams so far in this tournament, being able to watch as many games as I have, really impressed by the intensity. And I also think what you've seen is the gap in terms of quality is actually not that vast. I mean, if you look at some of these games, whether it be Borussia Dortmund yesterday against Fluminense, of course Thiago Silva playing really well there, or Porto against Palmeiras, there is a sense that there is not the biggest gap, and the quality is there, even if some games are ending 0-0. I think that is pretty relevant, and the intensity I think Flamengo are going to bring on Friday, the support, I think very intense support they're going to bring in this game. Chelsea are going to be aware of that, and you don't want to take this game light and be caught cold, as I think maybe a fear that Maresca had in Monday's game. So there's that to bring into the equation, and I want to hear your thoughts as well. I mean, are you still very much adamant we've got to be playing basically a first 11, or are you a little bit more relaxed because of maybe your approach to this tournament and want to see some of those fresh faces? So want to hear your lineups as ever in the comments below. Looking at the opposition, won their last 5, but there is some Chelsea connection here. The head coach being Felipe Luis, former Chelsea left-back, of course, was only at Chelsea for a season, 14-15, coming in the same summer as Diego Costa from that very impressive Atletico Madrid side that won La Liga. I think there was an expectation Felipe Luis was going to kind of be the replacement long-term for Ashley Cole, but for a variety of reasons, Dave playing so well at left-back for Jose, maybe a bit of, not really adapting to the environment. Felipe Luis returned to Atletico very quickly after that, and at the very least, even though his stint at Chelsea wasn't that long, he was part of a Premier League title winning team, so I think there is some fondness there. But it does make me feel a little bit old, to be honest, that he's already a head coach, because I do remember watching him in that starting 11 for Chelsea, or at least buying him at a time with Diego Costa and Fabregas that summer. Didn't feel that long ago. Feels a very long time ago now when you think of him as a head coach, and as well playing for Flamengo recently, signing after leaving Arsenal and the Premier League, is of course Jorginho, who made his debut, I believe, off the bench the other day. I think Jorginho is, obviously another player that I think a lot of fond memories with him at Chelsea. It's nice in this group. We've had Olivier Giroud, we've had Jorginho, and someone that, maybe his Chelsea story ended a little bit abruptly. I think it was the right time to move him on. He didn't really do anything outstanding at Arsenal. He basically was a squad kind of rotational player for them. But interesting to see how he fits in and how he could, work against the Chelsea midfield with the replacements for him, effectively Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, and that will be interesting to see if he does start the game on Friday in Philly. In terms of their threat, Georgian Di Arrascaeta is one of their top goal scorers, or at least one of their biggest threats. He scored the other night. He's definitely one of those players to look out for. He's 31 years old, but he entered the Club World Cup with 12 goals following the season, and 3 in his last 5 domestic appearances. They're top of the Brazilian league going into this tournament. So really, in terms of their quality, in terms of their stature, in terms of their momentum, you're looking at a team kind of maybe at the peak of their powers, or at least in a very good way, and they'll want to not only capitalize on that momentum, in some ways home advantage, at least with the climate, understanding that, appreciating that, and whether that will play and whether the conditions will play into this game as well. So I want to move on to my starting lineup. I already said this in my opening that I'm not entirely sure how much rotation is going to be, so I'm in some ways playing it a little bit cautiously, and maybe others will. Maybe you disagree with me. As I said, please let me know if you have a radically different lineup. I think Rob Sanchez will remain in goal. I think the wild shout here is Mike Penders, but I don't think he's going to start. And again, if it's a real dead rubber, that third game, if Chelsea win on Friday, then maybe you see Mike Penders start, but I can't see Mike Penders coming into this lineup at the moment. The back four, I think Reece James will start once again. He was taken off at half-time against LAFC. Maybe that was with a mind of, resting him, understanding that, making sure he still has enough minutes, to keep him fresh, to keep him match fit, but, you don't want to overexert him given the season he just had. So I think Reece will start this game. I do want to bring Trev into this back four. What's happening with Trev Chalobah? We are in limbo compared to where we were a year ago, and it seemed pretty clear the club wanted to get rid of him. We're not in that stage at the moment. I think him being taken to the Club World Cup is a positive sign. Now, I don't think Tosin and Colwill did anything wrong the other night. I just like seeing Trev in the starting 11. I like seeing him as, one of the big defenders that's relied upon. And, I still think he's a defender that should be remaining at Chelsea, should be a squad option. Seeing those fixtures being released earlier on Wednesday, I think very much reflected why you need a big squad, why you need a lot of options, especially coming off of a Club World Cup. So I think maybe Trev might come into this team here, and that may be of a view from Maresca to maybe slightly rotate there, because he's still effectively a first team player. So it's not like you're bringing Mamadou Sarr, for instance, in, who's never started a Chelsea game before. The one concern I continue to have is, other than that, left back, it's basically Marco Correa. The alternative you have is Josh Achimpong starts at left back. Malo Gusto starts at left back. I didn't like the look of Malo Gusto at right back the other night. That's your alternative option here. And that is a problem. And I think what's going to become more evident the longer these games go on is something that maybe hasn't been talked about a lot, is unless you are promoting from the academy, which I'm not opposed to, Chelsea are going to go out in the market and sign a new backup left back, because Vega apparently doesn't have a future. Chilwell clearly doesn't have a future. This is an oversight, and it's a squad oversight that really you cannot do going into this season. You need to have some form of competition, and maybe Jarell Hato from Ajax will provide that competition, a player that's been linked to Chelsea pretty much since the start of this window, because it's kind of getting to that stage where whether you think the player's brilliant or not, I just want a first team or someone who can come in and rotate with Cucurella at the moment, because he is having to play ridiculous amounts of minutes at the moment for Chelsea, because there is no one else, no natural left back in the squad at the moment, which is kind of bizarre, just absolutely wild. Then we get in central midfield. I think Enzo Fernandez will start this game. He came off the bench, he scored the goal that clinched the game. Want to see him start this game. I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, I think because it will be an intense game, I think the instinct will be you play Moises Caicedo. Caicedo playing at 100%. He had some brilliant moments the other night as well, and you want to keep that intensity, not a sluggishness in central midfield where maybe this game could be defined if Chelsea aren't alert. Flamengo want to capitalise on that, want to hit Chelsea feeling a little bit sluggish, as we saw in periods of that second half. I am also with a mind of I don't want to overexert Moises Caicedo. So maybe I would start Romeo Lavia again, another player who was taken off at half time. So he didn't play the full game the other night. So it may be a flip where Lavia starts this game, and then you do have the freedom to bring on Moises Caicedo at half time. It's just my fear of Caicedo and Cucurella continuing to play 90 minutes is not really what I want to see. But of course, as I'm sure many people point out, he is one of our best midfielders, one of our most important players, our player of the season for last year. You want to have him playing in important games, so I understand that. I think Palmer will also start. He had a few wild moments, but he also contributed heavily, of course, in the build-up to the second goal. I think Pedro Neto as well will keep his place after a really good performance. Clearly in good fitness, because he played, I think, the full 90 in the end, or played a massive part of the game on Monday. And I thought was Chelsea's, best player. I thought some of the crosses he put in were really good, should have been capitalised on a lot more, and of course opened the scoring. Left wing. So I have written my Substack piece for this week is about a question I posed whilst talking about the left wing options. Jamie Gittins, Malik Fofana, what we're talking about with Chelsea targeting a new winger. And I ponder the idea in this piece, and you can go and read it, is Nicholas Jackson moving on to the left wing. It's not a radical. I'm not claiming it's the first person to suggest it. We spoke about this when he literally signed for Chelsea, because of course he played a little bit for Villarreal there. He even played very briefly, I believe, for Pochettino. The one I reference in my piece is the Aston Villa replay in the FA Cup in Feb 2024. Go back and watch that game. So you saw an ability for him to play in that role too. It was something people were pointing out on the timeline when I was watching the game on Monday. Madueke didn't look that great on Monday. Could we move Jackson there? And also it does give the freedom of just, I'd like to see a situation of Delap and Jackson being on the pitch at the same time. Not as a front two, more just to see an experiment. Again, are you looking to experiment at this stage? Is Maresca not really viewing this as an experimental time? He's looking at this as a very serious competition, and you've got to play your best team. And I'll do that in a couple of weeks or months when we have pre-season games. Maybe, but just something I would like to maybe see if possible. If not Nicholas Jackson, I don't think Noni Madueke's performance justifies another start. I'd actually like to see Tyreek George given a start at left wing, and to see how he could do there. Because again, a bit like the Cucurella left back situation, there's not a lot of natural wide depth in this squad, and the way they're used. So I would see Tyreek George hopefully get a start. I found it a bit weird that Nkunku came off the bench the other night, and yeah, that was slightly bizarre. Just in the sense that I don't really see Nkunku having a future, but if he keeps coming off the bench, I mean, maybe it's just that strategy of getting him, always the classic thing of getting him in the shop window to sell him potentially. But that's a bit weird, given I think a lot of us had kind of written off him as a Chelsea player, given others as well, because there's no Andrey Santos in my predicted starting 11. I would be shocked if Andrey Santos does start this game. I'd be happy, pleasantly surprised if Andrey Santos starts this game. I hope that Andrey Santos finds his way into this team off the bench at least, because I was a bit surprised he didn't come off the bench the other night. But yeah, there are a few selections where you're kind of like, again, you have to kind of maybe be a bit more reserved on thinking, as I maybe anticipated at the start, and I was wrong, of thinking there's going to be mass rotation, when I just don't think that's how they're approaching this tournament, at least in the first two games, or at least from what we saw on Monday. We do wrap up this team. I would like to see Liam Delap start. That's kind of my biggest change in this starting lineup. I think he was very impressive off the bench on Monday. I thought the way he ran the channels, the way he seemed to quickly grow a connection with Cole Palmer, the setting up of the goal for Enzo Fernandez was brilliant. So it's not just about charity minutes, it's actually looking at what he did. And again, you're starting to look ahead to how this team is going to shape up and how the attack is going to look at in a very different way, with a different profile of centre forward. And I think it's when you bring in Delap and show that, yeah, this is not a guy that's just here to make up the numbers. We bought him to be a centre forward for Chelsea, to compete seriously. And that hopefully, if Jackson isn't being thought of as a left winger, it hopefully raises the level of his performance, which arguably it did in the first half of that LAFC game. So that is my starting 11. As ever, please do get involved in the comments. Please give me your thoughts and feelings about this game. Are you still going for a heavy team, like a strong first team, or are you wanting to rotate a bit more? Please let me know in the comments below. Check out the content already on the show, on the podcast feed for this week. We've spoken about transfers. We've also reacted to the Premier League fixtures. And of course, if you haven't checked it out already, go back and watch my review of the first Club World Cup win against LAFC. But we'll be back on Friday to react to whatever happens in Philly at Lincoln Financial Field, and hopefully Chelsea another step closer to getting out of the group. Those are my thoughts. Thank you again, and see you soon.